My name is Kim Richards, and I run KDR PR, and I have a program called Leading with Clarity, which was designed to support school leaders or education leaders map, to clarify, map, and scale their communications efforts. So you can see why the theme of this talk and this workshop today is all about zooming in on relationships and the connection and support that we're providing to our school communities now and always, but especially now in these challenging times where this medium is how we're connecting, right? So what we wanted to, that's what we wanted to talk through today is, you know, I know we're, what, a week and a half from the school year ending, and we're not together like we normally are. And I know it's causing an enormous amount of stress and pressure on all parts of the system and all parts of our communities. And I know there's a lot of conversations about how we're managing those and how we're, you know, going to plan and scenario plan for this coming school year. And we're navigating all the challenges, but I think for today's session, we really wanted to both talk about some of the challenges, but think about what have we learned as it relates to building and maintaining relationships during this time, and how we can continue to foster those connections and the support that we always have in a school environment, but in a virtual environment. And so who I have with me today is a few representatives from Benchley Weinberger Elementary here in San Diego, part of San Diego Unified School District. And what we wanted to do was have them talk through some examples of challenges that they've faced or things that they've noticed about how they're communicating and connecting, both from the principal, Mindy Ahrens, who you'll meet shortly, to the teachers and the teaching staff, to the students, and obviously the parents and families as well. So there's this chain of communication and connection that, you know, has been kind of an up and down whirlwind, right? So we wanted to hear from them what some of their experiences have been, what they've learned, and how they're, and almost more importantly, how they're taking what they've learned and moving it forward as they think ahead to next year. So what's worked that we're going to move forward? What hasn't worked that we just need to get rid of? Or and then part of, like, sort of the second half of this, the idea is that we want to invite you all in, and because we have a relatively small group, we were planning, if there's a larger group, we're going to break out into breakout rooms, but I think with this group we'll be able to navigate all together, which I think is really great. We'd like to hear from you all about what challenges you're facing, what they said that may have sparked something in you that you hadn't thought of or that you'd like to ask them. And so we'll make this more of a discussion. And Mindy is going to share a little tool that we can use to sticky note together. So with that, I'm going to have Mindy introduce herself, as well as Sue Sward, who is a kindergarten teacher, and Allie McRory, who has 4 boys at Benchley Weinberger. So she is the rock star mom and representative today. So Mindy, do you want to take it over?
Yeah, thank you. So boy, this has been quite a ride. So let me start, and then I'll work a little backwards with letting you all know that I became the principal of Benchley Weinberger Elementary 3 weeks before we closed all of the schools in the district. So it has been a wild, still fun ride these last few months. And I've been on this journey with Kim to become a better communicator as a leader of a school or an organization for a while now. I've been a longtime teacher, gosh, over 20 years, taught kindergarten all the way up to 8th grade, all different grade levels, all different schools, all different districts. And my switch from teaching to leading a school was actually to help build a tuition-free boarding school for young women in San Diego called Sisu Academy. It is on pause right now, and that's a whole nother story for a whole nother webinar. But there was some transitions that I needed to make, and so that's when I transitioned mid-year into Benchley as the principal. But again, starting a new school was really what made me think, gosh, I really need to figure out how to communicate this new school's vision, communicate how to even sign up. This was a model of tuition-free boarding school for young women is not something on the West Coast that really exists. So we had a lot of communication challenges to tackle. So I started working with Kim 2 years ago on how to communicate that vision. And then I moved to a more traditional school thinking things are going to be just so smooth, and a pandemic hits. So all new communication challenges cropped up. So one of the big messages I want to share with you today is I've really had to think about how I communicate according to what I'm trying to communicate. And like I said, there's so many challenges that all of you are probably in along with me around communicating procedures, guidelines, recommendation, but then there's a whole side where we need to communicate philosophy and vision. So there's all these different challenges out there, and I'm just going to share a few of kind of our lessons learned. And I don't know that I have a lot of solutions. I'm going to share some of what we've tried, and then I'm hoping that the group will brainstorm together around some of the challenges that you all are having too. So I'm in San Diego Unified at Benchley. So obviously the district level has made a lot of the bigger decisions, and those guidelines have then come down to us as principals to then communicate to our families. So there's been a level of communication through the district, and then there's a level of communication coming out from us. And so one thing that I've noticed is there's a lot of procedures and safety guidelines, like I shared earlier. And so one challenge that we've had is, how do you communicate all of this in an email, right? Or a phone call? I mean, there's so many logistics. And so one thing I wanted to share with you is a tool I use called Canva. If anyone's heard of Canva, show me a thumbs up so I know how much to show. Okay, so some of you love Canva. I'm going to share my screen real quick and show you a tool. So we recently had to communicate a pickup procedure that, whoops, I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop, even though I thought I wouldn't. Can you see this infographic? Yes, Kim. Okay. So this is a way we had this big end of the year item distribution that we were trying to figure out how to communicate, you know, when parents should be picking up items, how to pick them up safely, what will they get, what to do if they drive up, what to do if they walk up. I mean, can you imagine trying to communicate all of this through an email? So sometimes my lesson learned here is that we can make an infographic or communicate in a visual way, and it might help people hear what you're trying to say a little better. So that's one little lesson learned. Maybe use canva.com. My next lesson learned is oftentimes you think you're communicating, you think they're getting it, and for some reason it's just not going in the way you intend, and you keep thinking, what am I doing wrong? How am I not getting my message across? So I wanted to share a story about an upper grade teacher who, at the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic, we had just shut down, and she was trying to be helpful. So she shared out this sample schedule that she had created where, you know, she had said, you might do math from 9 to 10 o'clock, and then you might do language arts from 10 to 11, and so on and so on. So the whole day was scheduled. And she wrote, to her credit, all over it, optional, consider this. She wrote it in her email. This is not required, just optional, optional, optional. So she gets an email about a week later from a parent who is just frantic, just completely stressed out. Both parents work. And she's like, we just cannot do this, you know, blah, blah, blah. So they're going back and forth through email. But again, in the parent email, she's not really communicating the real problem, and the teacher's not really knowing the problem and communicating the solution. So we finally, about 2 weeks later, after going back and forth all this stress. We finally hop on the phone and realize, oh, the parent just didn't realize it was optional. So there was all this stress and anxiousness and anxiety for 2 weeks. The stress, of course, trickled down to the child. And then we just popped on the phone and realized, miscommunication. So just making sure that you're not just thinking about how you're communicating, but trying to figure out where you're missing, where your miscommunication is going, and having the empathy for the parents or whoever you're communicating with, and making sure they're hearing what you intend to communicate. And the last thing I want to share is more the thing I think I struggle with the most around communication is the philosophy piece. As a principal, I have I think empathy is one of my biggest strengths. And so I do a lot of talking to parents and a lot of talking to students. And I realize how much stress is out there with distance learning. And the district, San Diego Unified, has come up with a hold harmless grading policy, like many of the schools out there, where they're saying your grade, everybody's grades in the whole district either stays the same or goes up. It cannot go down during distance learning. And so one of the biggest things I think I've struggled with is explaining the why behind it to our teachers at our school. Some of them get it and they're like, yeah, I can see the equity issues and I can understand this. And then there's some teachers that are really feeling personal when kids don't do the work. And I had a teacher email me the other day saying, I want to send this email out that's, here's how many students are completing this assignment and this assignment and this assignment. So I really had to help her see the why behind hold harmless grading policies were created. So I guess the lesson learned here is just making sure you're always sharing the why somehow, some way, especially when you're communicating your philosophies, whether it's from the district level or from a personal level. So I'll turn it over to Sue Sward, who is our amazing TK Kinder teacher. She's awesome. Don't let her facial expressions fool you. She's doing an amazing job, and we wanted her to come on to share a little bit about the teacher perspective.
Well, thank you. And I had to make quite an adjustment too, because I've taught kindergarten for 30 years. So all day, every day with 5 and 6-year-olds, 4, 5, and 6-year-olds, you always have whatever's in your hand. This is a phone. You touch the phone. You swipe up the phone. So I'm used to having lots of visuals. When we went to distance learning and knowing that we had to prepare for success, we wanted to get all the families set up on Seesaw. So we started out very slowly, and again, it just the words turned into Charlie Brown teacher. It just turned into womp, womp, womp. No, a lot of people did not understand what we were talking about. They don't come from the same perspective. So when we could feel the stress coming on, instead of trying to communicate through the email or dojo messages, I would hop on the phone. Oftentimes that turned into a FaceTime call, actually, so that I could see what they were looking at on the computer. Go to the top right, the ... drag down. And then as we baby stepped into it and we got everyone set up to submit work, that's when we really started to ask them, okay, now we want you to really submit some work and show. And through it all, we've had to make some adjustments because a few people working full-time or living in shared households, both households didn't sign up for these assignments or the systems to submit the work. So in kindergarten, we're used to differentiating. That was difficult to do in distance learning. But I also realized not only did I have to differentiate for the students, I had to differentiate for their families as well and accommodate those that needed a little bit of extra. And I just found the best solution was to hop on the phone, because the words got lost in too many emails and too many conversations that way.
And Allie is our parent extraordinaire. I think she might win the award. 4 boys.
4 boys.
So Allie, I hope you don't mind I share this, but I think we talked for a different reason. She's also our foundation president at our school, but so we were having a meeting, I think 2 days in, or maybe I think it was 2 days into distance learning, and she told us that she cried, I think 5 times or something the first day of distance learning.
There have been a lot of tears.
But then I talked to her yesterday, and she's had all these wonderful things to say. So I wanted her to kind of share the beginning of distance learning and how that went, and then maybe how it's going now.
Absolutely. So we have, our oldest is in 5th grade. Our middle, well, one of our middles is in 3rd grade. Our 3rd is in 1st grade. And then we have a 17-month-old who, if his climbing skills at this age or any indication, he'll be at the top of Mount Everest by the time he's 10. So our household during this lockdown has been very interesting. It's like literally divide and conquer with the distance learning, with the baby, and I work full time. So it's been a challenge. So the suggested schedules, our 3rd grade teacher sent one of those, and I was like, well, that's out the window. Like, that's not going to work because I can't hold him accountable, during my work schedule. So we have really found it's been a puzzle of how to fit the different schedules, the different curriculums, and the different programs together. And we're in it now. The first couple of weeks, it was very optional. We didn't know what this was going to look like. It was more of like, just keep the kids on a schedule, keep them reading, keep them doing some math, just something to stimulate their brain so they're not watching TV or, just playing all day. So once we got into the distance, and during that period, I should say, there was a lot of stress from the parents, and the teachers heard it. Mindy heard it, especially being new. She's probably like, oh my gosh, these parents are really involved because it's one of those schools. And so there was a lot of stress. There was a lot of unknowns, and parents kind of jumped in like, oh, we should be doing this. We should be doing this, where it really does come down from the district. So once we were able to kind of back the parents off, and, the staff was able to back the parents off, and the district came down and said, this is what it's going to look like. Our teachers pivoted so well. It's incredibly impressive, because I'd say probably, and Sue and Mindy, you can correct me, but I'd say probably 95% of them were not on any kind of like Google Classroom or Seesaw or whatnot. I think probably Class Dojo was used by most, but that was pretty much the extent of it. Correct me if I'm wrong there, because I might be wrong, but going forward, once they had the directive, they all managed to get onto Google Classroom, get the curriculum up. So for example, in 1st grade, all 4 of the teachers in all, there's 4 1st grade classes. So all the teachers got together and, again, divide and conquered with all the lessons. So all of the 1st grade class, and Sue, you guys might have done this too. I don't have a kindergartner anymore, but all of the kids in 1st grade have the same curriculum. So I could call a kid's parent from another class, and they're doing the exact same thing, same links and whatnot. So they send out like a weekly lesson plan for us. So we can do it at any time during the day. We can do 3 days in 2 days. We can finish on a Wednesday, on a Thursday, pretty much just as long as the kid's getting the work done and reading every day. That's pretty much like, the main focus. So that has been really helpful, that they were cohesive in that. With that being said, there's been a lot of busy work that I would love to see, like the basic worksheets. And again, it's 1st grade, so I'm not an educator, so that might just be part of how their brains need to develop. But it'd be awesome to see some project-based learning for these younger guys to kind of tie it together. And if we're allowed, say we don't go back and we're allowed to be in small groups, maybe like some groups can get formed or something that they could do it together. I don't know. These are all just suggestions based on the unknowns, right? But Seesaw has been awesome for 1st grade, and Loom. Sue, are you teaching on Loom? So, and that's like the, videos and educational, and they can stop and use pointers and stuff like that. That's been really helpful. So that's pretty much 1st grade, and they're not on Google Classroom, which is interesting. So they're just sending out this lesson plan, and the links are embedded to whatever we need to do. And so I just do a bookmark for in his Google Classroom format, I do a bookmark. It takes him straight to the lesson plan, and then he knows how to get into Seesaw and upload the work that's needed to, you know, it says upload to Seesaw or whatever. So he can do that on his own. So that's been awesome. Super easy, 2 steps, 2 programs done. When you get into the 3rd grade, there are many programs that are being used. You've got Khan Academy, you've got Prodigy, Clever. There's a ton, and it's hard to keep track of it, to be honest. Even though they're doing a great job of doing a daily schedule within Google Classroom, and you know exactly what needs to be done, sometimes if they're on different devices, it's hard to keep track of the passwords and all of that. So that has been a little bit of a challenge for the 3rd grade. Skipping on to my 5th grader now, they've been on Google Classroom and completely paperless the entire year. This was not an issue at all. He basically just got on his computer and continued through the day, just like he was in the classroom. He does miss the collaboration with friends to be able to do work and whatnot. So we've been able to set up like Zooms where they'll read the book together and then discuss it. It's like they're a little book club, or they'll do math together on Zoom or whatever it is. So they've been able to do that kind of thing, but it has been the easiest for him. And so we've taken, as a parent, we've taken this opportunity to really have lessons in responsibility for him now that he's going into middle school. So we'll let him do it on his own, and then I can go into his Google at the end of the day and check what he's done. So he's being held accountable, but I'm letting him kind of do his own thing and giving him a little bit of a leash in a sense, because especially if we go to distance learning or some combination of it in the fall and he's in middle school, like, I mean, that's so much work and there's going to be so much responsibility put on them. So it's kind of been nice to have that little bit of a leash for him. So the only thing that I would love to see a little bit more of as a parent in the fall, if this continues, is program consistency. Whether everybody's on Google Classroom, it all looks the same, just for ease on us. And that might not be, that might be far-fetched because every curriculum is so different. But if we could have like, okay, everybody communicates through Dojo, and you submit your work through Seesaw, and the lessons are on Google Classroom. As long as we all know and it's consistent, it would be much easier as a parent. So that would be my suggestion, my only request would be consistency for the programs. But it's been a lot. The kids have risen to the occasion, and it couldn't have gone better now that we're sunk into it. So with the help of the Benchley staff, especially.
Good thing we're recording that, Allie.
A lot of tears. I've called a few of my teacher friends in tears going, how can we do this? And they back me off the ledge. And, everybody kind of has gone through their own ups and downs through this whole thing, whether, I think every human being on the planet at this point has gone through their own emotional thing. But that's kind of my feedback is just kind of a little bit of consistency. I kind of hope that when we go back that everybody's kind of stays at this level of technology, whether that's feasible or not, I don't know, but it'd be nice as a parent to kind of have that.
Allie, you hit on something really important that I think is really interesting, no matter if it's in education or not. That tension between differentiation, like Sue brought up, and consistency, right? It's a constant tension that we're thinking about a lot. And no matter what, we've all grown, and our knowledge around technology and our whole school, parents, kids, teachers, has all grown. You can't back up, right? You can't go backwards in your knowledge. So that's good news. But there is this tension of like, how do you differentiate between the different needs of the families, needs of the kids, needs of the teachers? And so that's going to be a tension no matter what. You can't necessarily solve that. And then, the other thing is going forward into the fall, we don't know what school's going to look like. And so this is not me telling you what we're doing, all of you on this call, or what San Diego Unified is doing at all. No announcements here. I'm just saying there might be a place for a need of a family or a student to match a need of a teacher, right? And then maybe it looks different for different families and different teachers depending on those needs. I mean, we definitely have some families who are like, we are not returning to school at all in any capacity until there's a, what's it called? Vaccine, thank you. And there's other families that are like, if you require a mask, we're leaving the district. So, we want to come back 100% normal. And it's like, how do you make this work? And then we have the same thing with teachers. Some teachers are saying, we want to come back 100%, full force, normal. And then we have some that are like I'm at risk, I can't come back, so maybe we look at fall differently and try to match needs is a possibility. That is not coming from the district or from me, I'm just saying, hypothetically. So the other last little point I want to make before we switch gears here is something Kim taught me, and it sounds like something probably all of you are already doing, but it helps for her to remind me of this all the time. And that is, make sure you're always seeking feedback. And feedback isn't just in a Google form or just, how many people pop on Zoom. It's, realizing that 5 families out of 30 didn't understand that schedule was optional. Okay, that tells me something, that's feedback. If 5 of them didn't realize it was optional, there's something going on with the communication that it's not effective. Or if I send out this infographic about distribution day, and then I get 30 parents asking me about yearbooks, I realize, oh, I should have addressed yearbooks in there. Allie knows, because that is a real problem. I've already gotten a whole bunch of emails about yearbooks. So, just making sure you're seeking feedback and seeking it in lots of different ways, not just, like a Google survey. So I'll leave you with that and send it back to Kim.
Yeah, thank you, ladies. It was great to hear. It's always helpful to have different perspectives. Obviously schools and education is a very complex system, and we all have different perspectives. So I think it was really helpful to hear each of your experiences and what's kind of the path that you've been on and the revelations you've had, and the sort of collective calm, I guess, in a way, is what I felt too, that you sort of settled into this new reality and you're making the best of it, which I think is really positive. And so I did see that of the group here, we've got a great mix. And I think that's what's interesting. We've got some school folks, we have some people from nonprofits represented who obviously do education outreach and are working directly with schools. So I think we have, we're primed for a really interesting discussion here. So what we wanted to do was sort of twofold, depending on what you guys are thinking and how you're processing all of this and where you're sitting today in your current environment. But we wanted to transition to a Q&A. So we can do it one of 2 ways, again, depending on what you all are thinking, is questions directly for Mindy, Sue, and Allie, or things that it sort of brought up and reflection of where you're at and challenges that you're currently facing as it relates to making connection and the communication aspects of, the relationship building and all the things that we're trying to do and moving forward, the learning for our youth. So that's what we wanted to do now. In this Zoom environment, we can do sort of the literal hand raising in the chat, or we can just sort of hand raise and everyone can unmute as they go. I think because we're a small enough group, we can manage just doing it separate from the chat box. So if someone has something burning they want to share right now, question, thought, reflection, why don't you go ahead and raise your hand and unmute yourself, and we can get going. Yeah, Christy, yeah. Oh, you're not, there you are.
So my question is actually for Sue. I work at an elementary school, and I take care of attendance, but I'm also a guidance assistant. And so a big part of my job during distance learning has been to make sure that our students had the technology, the devices, the internet that they needed. And now that, well into it. It's just trying to keep them engaged. And so I'm making daily phone calls to follow up with families to offer them to support and encouragement. And one thing that you mentioned, Sue, is how important it was for you to actually pick up the phone and have that personal connection with families, because they're already receiving so much information via email. And I think oftentimes teachers' messages can just get mixed in with everything else that they're already getting. But how do I convince some of our teachers that don't typically communicate that way, that that's a good way to really effectively reach these families? Because I'll have teachers say, well, I've sent the class dojo and I send emails, but they seem to be hesitant to pick up the phone.
And I felt very comfortable giving my cell phone number. I would just call from my cell phone number. And I know Mindy taught us that there was some
Google phone number or *69, yeah.
And I have 23 kids. Now, I didn't have to call everybody. And it's on days that I haven't called everybody, but gosh, I think that's just, I felt very comfortable doing it. And I don't know if it's because this happened at the end of the year and in the fall. No, I guess I would call them in the fall too. I think it just cut to the chase so much faster than the messaging back and forth. That
Agreed.
It just, you know, it would just help them understand the message better. And a lot of the kids, it was just such a shock. We expected to be out 2 weeks, then spring break and go back. And the kids were just, I want to go back and see my friends and see my teacher. So a phone call was the next step.
So if you don't mind, I'll pop in for a minute because this is not an issue. Sue, you can tell from her personality, would just pick up the phone. She's amazing. We, however, definitely had a group of teachers, a small group at our school that one in particular absolutely will not. She's very private. So she will not call. She also will not Zoom with her students, and that's allowed in our union contract. So that's obviously a huge challenge as a principal. I want to be like, just pick up the phone. So one thing I've done, we haven't gotten to the point where I've made her pick up the phone, but another teacher who was also not really wanting to, but was a little more willing, I had her get on the phone with me with some parents, and together we were on the phone, and then we debriefed after, and I made a huge deal about, oh my gosh, see what, like, I didn't say it this way, but like, see what happens when you get on the phone, and just had her reflect on what happened when she emailed versus what happened when she got on the phone. So that debrief, I think, helped her realize, just pick up the phone. But there's going to be some that, you know, maybe.
Well, and I think you made a good point, because it, you know, with the union contracts, we're sort of, our hands are tied. Yeah. Okay.
And then in the teacher that I'm thinking about that will not call because of her privacy, and that's her choice. I would call, and I have called and then relayed with a call to her what the parent, you know, what the real issues are, and gotten down to it.
And that's kind of what I resorted to. It ends up being a whole lot longer than it needs to be, but okay. Exactly. I appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
I was also going to say, Christy, just to jump in, I know Mindy and I talked about this, and I've talked about it with some other principals recently going through similar challenges, was asking the teacher or teachers who are hesitant, like having a conversation to try to unpeel some of that, you know, to kind of understand a little bit more about what's going on. It's aside from just not wanting to pick up the phone, like, are they nervous about, you know, them asking a difficult question that they can't answer? Are they nervous about someone being upset and them not being prepared to handle the situation? I mean, it could be any number of things, but I think taking the time to understand what's behind that will allow you to figure out the best way to, like in Mindy's case, she was able to get on the phone with the teacher and sort of ease that worry a little bit. So maybe that could be something else too ahead of time to understand what's underneath all that.
Awesome, thank you.
Anyone else want to share what they're experiencing currently, things that have been crossing your mind as you're listening to the panel today, questions you have, something you want to add? Things related to, something we've been talking about is, Mindy and I have been talking a lot about is how, obviously relationships and the connection, obviously like Sue mentioned too, it's like you're in person, you're touching and handling things and interacting in a different way, how we're kind of maintaining that bond and connection with our communities through this experience, and how we can kind of take that forward into next year. So curious in response to that, Allie, Sue, anyone else here, either as a parent at home with your kids, as a nonprofit, nonprofit provider offering services and support to schools, what kind of blocks or things that you felt or where you've had success? I think there's a lot of ways that we can kind of navigate that question a little bit. Or just sharing what's worked. Doesn't have to be a challenge. You don't have to say, you know what, this has been really hard for me. Some people don't want to reveal what's not working, but sharing successes is just as helpful right now. Tony?
I have something that's worked, and then I'm sort of thinking how to ask this question, but it will hopefully come to me by the time I get through what's worked. So initially at RMC, we sort of had this plan of trying to reproduce what we did in a real classroom in some kind of online experience. And about, halfway through the process of trying to like recreate, we realized that wasn't going to really be 100% possible. And so we have really been successful in just leaning into the idea that we are on a computer, and that opens up a whole other world of, trying to teach a group class with instruments online is not necessarily going to work, but teaching a music editing software online where everybody's at their keyboard really does kind of work, and nobody needs an instrument in their class. So I think what's been most successful for us is really thinking creatively, sort of leaving behind the how do we recreate and just thinking outside that box creatively. My question really is sort of, now would be the normal time as a nonprofit contractor working with schools, when we would be sort of talking and like wrapping up the bow on the fall plans. And understandably, like the schools are just, again, understandably overwhelmed with just figuring out the moment. And so I wonder, there may be no one answer, but is it just too much to think about now? Like, in your opinion, do you like appreciate those conversations? Would you rather those conversations just sort of like, we have no idea how we're going to do it right now, and let's just hold that off? Or, or wow, we would really love to think through or have help thinking through how we're going to do that. And I'm also, it's complicated, but sort of listening to what Ali said about sort of the overwhelm of multiple programs, like having an outside contractor come in with possibly yet another login and password and way of doing things, like how to best support that is also something that I hadn't thought about until I heard her say that. So I don't know if there was a question in there somewhere, but I'll leave that with the group.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm thinking about as a leader. So we were told that our school was closing the morning that our school closed, right? So we've been in like, like crazy mode since then, just living in the moment, trying to make sure that day is okay, and that's it. And so finally, we're almost to the end of the year. So I'm like, okay, we can get ahead of this. And for me, what I'm thinking about now is we've got to like rethink this whole thing. And I'm glad someone said it a few minutes ago. We really need to think about what is high quality instruction in some kind of capacity look like? Not just substitution, but now that we are going to have some kind of blended situation next year, how do we make this really meaningful and not just get to the end of the year like we were this year? So for me, I'm almost like, kind of like you said, like, okay, I don't want to talk about any programs right now. I want to get to like, how do we have some equity? What's important? What do we want to teach? Not do we have to teach? Like, looking at the millions of standards out there, you can't get to them anyways in a year. So what's core to our kids? And what do we need to do to set them up for success in this blended environment next year? And so after we figure that out, then I feel like we can go to, okay, what are the best programs? What are the ways we can get to what we want versus just more, getting out of the hamster wheel, I think will be nice, and having that summer to kind of think through all of it.
I was just thinking of art and music, and it was, easy to give them, not busy work, Mrs. Reyes, but but
it's different for the younger kids.
I know.
That's what
I'm ribbing you there. But I want them to do art, and the equity, we have construction paper at school. I want everyone to do an art project. I don't want to tell everyone, go out and buy some construction paper, go out and buy paint, and get how to music. We tried to sing Happy Birthday on a Zoom. Wow. That was a learning experience. So that's what, looking forward, I would like to, how do we prepare for that in the fall? Are there take-home kits for project-based learning? Are there materials that we can send home?
So I'll piggyback on what Mindy was saying. Mindy and I have had hours of conversation about this. So as foundation president, we do a ton of fundraising and to bring in extra programs to the school. So in the past, we've had a choir teacher. Last year, we funded VAPA, the Visual and Performing Arts program through the district. We decided not to go forward with that. And before the shutdown, we actually put a survey out to all of the parents at the school. So we're just to back up a second, we're a communications magnet. But we wanted to be able to poll the parents who are raising the money to find out what they would like to see the school bring in. Overwhelmingly, they voted for STEM STEAM. Totally different than what we've done before. Awesome, exciting. Well, we're getting all these program suggestions, and now we're trying to vet it out without knowing what the fall is going to look like. So to your point, Tony, if somebody came to us and said, here's the deal, for the fall, we do this online, and then in the spring, if we can, we pivot to in-person or whatever other services you provide. It would, if you package a plan up of the combo and what it would look like, it would help those decision makers a ton. Because we don't really know what the focus, we don't know what we're supposed to be doing right now, and to have someone that's kind of championing that program and that plan would be so helpful. And to be able to pivot, last minute decisions if they committed to you.
Flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Scott?
I have a friend. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. If you hear screaming, that's my kids in the background. I have a friend who's raised by a Baptist preacher, and he's told me this phrase, Q. And it speaks to if things are a little bit fuzzy coming from communication, it's a few steps away. So I guess that's
Scott, we're having a hard time hearing
communication. Oh.
It's cutting out a little bit, so I don't know about everyone else, but I was getting about, I don't know if I got one full word, so I don't want you go too far without knowing.
this.
Story of our
Even-
lives.
How about now? No?
This is looking good so far. Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay.
Great. Okay. That's what the microphone's for. So I guess can you hear me now? No? Yes? Can you hear me? No. Okay. I'll type.
All right. We are moving to the chat question. Yeah. So we're going to relay through the chat box and we'll go that direction for now.
Kim, would now be a good time to pop the secret tool kit? No, the secret tool on maybe the.
Yeah, let's do that because now I realize it's amazing how fast an hour goes. We've got, according to my clock, about 11 minutes left. So what Mindy's going to share, you're going to share the link, right, Mindy?
Yeah, I'm going to do that right now.
There's this app called Mural, which I don't know if you all have seen yet or been engaged with at all, but if you click through the link, you'll see basically like a digital whiteboard of sorts, and the idea is that you can add, and I'll let Mindy jump in too because she was the one who really started this, but oh, you can see it on the shared screen now. So it's a way to add our sticky notes and to share ideas and give feedback and move things around as you would in, like I said, with sticky notes in a live situation. So Mindy, did you want to share about how you broke this up and how you envisioned it being shared with the group?
Yeah, so I've recently found this tool and it does cost eventually, but I think there might be an educator discount and possibly free. And I know it's free for 90 days. So their tactics work. I'm totally addicted. So it is, if you're a design thinker, this is a great tool for you. But it's a great way to also invite voice from, especially with Zoom. We obviously can't get everyone's voice in there, especially if it's an hour-long call. So this is a way to invite voice from even people that maybe can't get their out loud voice into a Zoom call. So the way I broke this up is I just made it very simple, just put communication challenges on here. And I have been kind of taking some notes as we've been chatting. And this was the first kind of big topic that got brought up. Maybe some people not feeling comfortable with phone calls or Zoom and the issues around privacy. The second one was sort of how do we transition and prepare for this new normal. And then I just created some spaces for some other challenges. You should be able to edit. This will be interesting to see. I'm new at this, so we'll see if people can edit. So if you want to add a challenge and delete this and add a new challenge or add a new column, that's fine. And then you can just pull the stickies down and make them bigger and add your thoughts and questions and comments, and you can make them as big or small as you want. And I thought this is something that maybe we could keep going for a while and be adding to, and we can all share it and look back at it and see kind of some solutions that different people had for some of our dilemmas. So an ongoing webinar.
Yeah, and I think too, as you're working with your teams and working through, some of these ideas, some of these challenges, inviting some of your colleagues on too, I think is a great idea. So just a way to keep the conversation going and stay connected, since I know oftentimes with these, it's like, hi for an hour, we share some ideas and then we move along. So this might be a nice way to actually carry this forward and stay connected. So go ahead and play in that if you'd like in this next little while we have, but I also want to make sure, Scott, if you wanted to either try again unmuting, or I didn't see your message come through, if you wanted to share a question or a thought. Yeah? Okay. And is anyone else, oh, here we go.
I've seen principals offer effective communication, but not necessarily human communication. For instance, it would be easy to send videos often every day. Have you seen things like that? I'd love to get Allie's perspective on this, because I sent a video early in distance learning, and it was a time when I wanted to share more of a philosophy topic, not necessarily like a procedures topic. So Allie, I'm curious, like the parent perspective of you. Did you not watch it? I see your face. That was my worry. Okay, so that's good, because this gives me feedback. I am not a video watcher either. Like, I don't have time for that. And so my worry was that parents weren't watching, you know,
I don't even remember it coming through.
It was a long time ago.
But and it was also when a ton of emails were coming through from each teacher, and we were all kind of going crazy and whatnot. But I think if we had, and maybe, you know, I know that we're going to work on getting some kind of, maybe ramping up social media or whatnot. Maybe that's a platform. I think you'd have to have a cohesive platform to be able to do that, as opposed to just emailing it out every day. There's just so many emails. There's so many emails. And so you don't want it to get lost, because you want this to be effective, right? So
I'm seeing Scott's, and I'm curious. So some of our principals in our district do calls, like it'll come through as a call instead of, or in addition to an email. And Allie, I know you only have kids at our school. Sue, have you had kids that have gone through the district schools?
No, but I have friends that when they look at caller ID and they see it's the school, it's that balance of how many are you? Oh no, we're not going to pay attention. They call every day. I can't listen to another message. So
it goes back to that, like, differentiation without that tension of, like, differentiation without overdoing it, or, you know, clogging the phone lines or the email inbox. You know, it's like, how do you have that balance?
I can speak as a parent. I have high schoolers, and the principal, I love that you referenced it as human communication. His heart just really went out to the seniors. I don't happen to have a senior, my daughter's junior, but he used video. And I think it was a very, very effective way for the students to see how much he genuinely cared. Because I think, especially as the kids get older, they forget how much teachers and staff genuinely care about the kids, and they're really heartbroken to not be able to see them every day. And so that video piece was such an effective way for him to communicate that to the students, and they were missing out on so much. And I think they at least just felt you know, that love, really.
So did he email out the message, or did he?
He sent it a variety of ways. It was on social media, but it also was an email. And I think to be able to reach parents with an email possibly, and students maybe, you know, are more used to the social media. And it was even YouTube. So he used a variety of methods to reach everybody.
I think maybe as a parent, if it was like you knew it was going to come on Monday mornings, and it was kind of like your weekly message, like people would be more conditioned to watch it and to listen for it and to know it was coming. But if you want to use it as like a homeroom type announcement thing for the kids, like the teachers could always embed that into their daily schedules. If it was probably done in advance.
And then it also goes back though to the why. I mean, if I'm being someone that doesn't necessarily pop on and watch videos, if it doesn't catch me, or if I don't need some kind of information in there, I'm only watching 10 seconds of it. And really, I'm just looking for the written version with bullet points, right? Which, you know, but I'm not, that's just one person, right? Other people probably love watching videos, especially on YouTube. In your example of the senior video, I could see that would be way better than anything else, right? You want that human connection, and you want to be able to watch it over and over and have it asynchronous. So that, I guess, back to when would it be appropriate, you know? I'm curious, all of you with kids, I'm wondering how your teachers have been communicating and what's catching your attention and what's not. anybody wants to share.
I was going to say too, but while people are thinking, that as far as like the medium or like the way that you're communicating, like you're saying, Allie, if there's the consistency, like you come to expect, and that's not just for parents, but for staff or, you know, partners, collaborators, you know, leaders to district as well, knowing that that's the way you're going to receive certain types of information, and getting that consistently is going to be much more effective than occasionally sending one because it seems like the right thing to do. So I think whatever tool or whatever medium of communicating is the most effective for the group you're trying to reach, to know that and to be consistent with it is probably, you know, your best bet. And it's not going to be the same in every scenario. Everyone's going to have a different focus and a different, you know, group that they're trying to focus their attention on. So just something to add to that. We have a minute left, everybody. How did that already happen? So I definitely want to keep the conversation going. Like we said, we've got this mural that we will keep up. I don't know, many of you know, it's just like a lifelong thing, or you know what, if it's just, we'll just see, we'll experiment. But please stay connected to that, add to that as it makes sense for you. We'll send a recap. I don't know, Brenda's on here, if there's gonna be, I have this recorded so I can share in follow-up. I know some of you are on my mailing list. I'm not sure about all of you. If you'd like to be added, I send tips related to school communication and connection and relationship building and all that fun stuff every 2 weeks. So they're just really short tips. So I'd be happy to add you. If you want to make a note either with a hand or in the chat, let me know. I can add you. Yeah. And then I'll be sending a recap with the replay actually tomorrow. So I can add you this afternoon. And then, yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. And I am just so thrilled you all joined. It's great to see you. I hope this was helpful and you got some interesting or good food for thought as you are embarking on this up and down journey we call remote learning. And, you know, I just know that these types of connections and opportunity to share and learn, both with the challenging and the success that we're having, we can all, you know, collectively lift each other up and move to the next phase, whatever it looks like. So I just appreciate you taking the time, and I hope that we can do this again in the near future. Brenda, did you want to add anything?
Just thank you so much, and I am happy to send anything to the group as a whole. I think this work that you're doing to help support everyone through this process, and really as we kind of navigate the unknown, is so very important. So thank you both, well, to all of you on the panel. We really appreciate having a teacher and a parent and a principal perspective. So thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. And yeah, we will be in touch soon. I'll be sending out an email tomorrow with everything. So I look forward to staying in touch, and I hope you all have a good rest of your week.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye. Nice to meet everyone.